Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week, The One Hand, issue number 1 from Image Comics. Now, this is written by Ram V, with artwork by Lawrence Campbell, coloring by Lee Lowridge, design work from Tom Mueller, and exceptional lettering from Aditya Bidikar. This is an absolutely fantastic book. It's part of this is a start of a mini-series that's going to be connected to another mini-series, right? So it's a murder mystery detective story. That's what this is. It's slightly set in the future, so there's got a little bit of futuristic aspects to it, but it is just a down and gritty cop, or detective I should say, about to retire, and then an old case rears back its ugly head. And it's an idea we've seen in tons of movies, in tons of comics, in tons of novels, but what makes this work so well is that futuristic setting as well as its companion series. So we have another series on the way called The Six Fingers. So One Hand, Six Fingers. That one's going to be written by Dan Waters, and it's all from the perspective of the killer. And these books are going to each tell their own individual and unique story, but at the same time, all wrapped together into one overall narrative that's going to reward reading both books. It's designed that way, but it's also designed to just enjoy on its own. So The One Hand, though, this is amazing. You already know that I love Ram V, and sometimes we talk about his flowery, poetic language, his use of words, his use of pacing, things like that. That's all on display here, but in that more grounded, noirish, detective type story, right? And as speaking of noir, the artwork is very noir inspired. Lots of like shadows, lots of spotting of blacks. You got those like Venetian blind shadows going across straight out of a 50s, 40s detective story, but set in a futuristic world. It's like 2873. So I guess it is a little bit into the future, but it still reads as a classic, compelling, and mysterious detective story. The coloring is top-notch, the lettering is top-notch. Everything about this book, from the writing, through the art, through every single individual piece, makes one expertly crafted book that has a very familiar story, but does it in an interesting way with a nice twist towards the end. And let me tell you something. I've already gotten a peek at Six Fingers number 1. It's awesome. You're going to want this book, and you're going to want that book. Seriously, if detective-style stories is your thing, if Ram V is your thing, if great artwork and great designed comics and perfectly lettered comics and exceptionally colored comics are your thing, if good comics are your thing, then you should pick up The One Hand this week from Image Comics. We also have the conclusion of Bloodrik this week. So this is from Andrew Cronky. This has just been a great barbarian story. It's about this dude, big, and he's just hungry. He's just looking for food, right? And all kinds of obstacles get into his way. Some ridiculous, some very scary, some rooted in a grounded sense of reality, some very fantastical and based in swords and sorcery type stuff. But it never loses the focus on this main character, the titular character of Bloodrik, his story, and having a little bit of fun with it. Now, it is written and illustrated by the same dude, and the artwork is super gnarly. It is great. It's got grit. It's got that texture. It's got a rough rawness to it that I absolutely love. And this is one of the most brutally violent comic books on shelves right now. Like 100%, this one has some shocking moments that I was just like, yeah, that was pretty gnarly. So if you like gnarly, cool, gory, raw, kind of barbarian type stuff, you need to read Bloodrik. It's definitely a rewarding experience. Then we got Crave, issue number 3 from Maria Lovett. This book is steamy, this book is saucy, this book is sexy. It's about this app. You tell the app what you want, and the app will tell you what to do to get it. For instance, I like this person, I would like to make out with them. Go to this elevator at this time. Both people wind up in the elevator together. The elevator stops. boom, what happens? People start making out, start knocking the boots. You know what I'm saying? But that, of course, at this school where this app is catching fire, it's setting up all kinds of conflict. It's setting up people getting their feelings hurt, people getting like horribly hurt by their loved ones, their lovers, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, their partners, just going off and basically screwing someone in the middle of the hallway in front of everybody to see. Now, the book is sexy, the book is interesting, it's very sensuous. However, the story is just very simple. And here at issue number 3, it's becoming a little bit dull. It's like everything you can see coming, and then when it comes, it's not that exciting. Hey, it sounds like sex for a lot of people. Anyway, Crave, number 3, still a cool idea, but it needs to have a little bit more meat on them bones. Then we got Kaya here with issue number 15 of Kaya. This book has made it 15 issues, and it is still just as solid as it was when it first started. Writer-artist Wes Craig does a great job of building tension, of building the story, of building this world, and doing it in a really cool, designed, and provocative way. The artwork is so clean. It's got room to breathe. It's got an excellent pace and flow across the entire story, and it just works. It's beautiful artwork. It's a great story. It's got charm to it. It's got wit to it, but it's also got drama and a little bit of comedy. But it's a pretty solid book. And if you've never read Kaya, I would highly encourage you to check it out. It's one of the best books on shelves. Then we got Gunslinger Spawn here with issue number 28. This is a pretty cool issue of Gunslinger Spawn. This has been one of my favorites out of all the Spawn books. Brett Booth is no longer with this title, but he is... I've heard rumors that he's doing more Spawn work in the future, but I don't know if that's true. But Dexter Soy is the artist now, and let me tell you something. Dexter Soy's just killing it in the pages of Gunslinger Spawn. So a face from Gunslinger's past shows up in the future as like a futuristic cyborg type thing. Used to be a friend, now he's an enemy. This is just their battle and how it gets resolved, but I like it. I like the artwork. I like the sense of just doing your own thing, and that's what Todd McFarlane's been doing for over 30 years now in the pages of Spawn. And now Gunslinger Spawn. Plus $2.99 cardstock cover. Still one of the best books, best deals you're going to get out there. All right, let's jump over to Marvel. We got Ultimate Black Panther issue number 1. This is definitely a hot book this week. It's already been selling for above $20. That's ridiculous. I would not overpay for this book if I was you. It's a good book. I liked this book. I like this Ultimate Universe, but this is the perfect kind of storm where Ultimate Spider-Man, because of the performance of Ultimate Invasion, was kind of under-ordered from what the demand was going to be. But when you're doing comic books, right, when you work at a comic shop, you run a comic shop, you're buying these things, you're having to buy them like a month, up to 2 to 3 months ahead of time, so you really depend on your customers to gauge interest, right? And a lot of people across the board saw a lowered interest in what Hickman was doing at Marvel and in his Ultimate stuff, Ultimate Invasion, right? But that led to the perfect storm of Ultimate Spider-Man, which was a really solid book, caught fire, got a lot of word of mouth out there, sold out quickly, started going up in price, and now we got Ultimate Black Panther issue number 1. So this book, for instance, hit FOC before Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 dropped. Now, whatever your shop ordered of Ultimate Spider-Man, they probably ordered significantly less of Ultimate Black Panther. And a lot of people tried to up those orders, and they weren't able to do so. So this book is going to be really slim out there. But if you see it and you're able to pick it up at cover price, I would recommend doing that. If not, just wait for the second print. But it is a good, solid book. I wouldn't say that it's as good as Ultimate Spider-Man, but it was a cool take on Black Panther, an interesting take on Wakanda. And what this book, along with Ultimate Spider-Man, what it's done is it has caused me in particular to recontextualize my interest in Ultimate Invasion. Ultimate Invasion kind of felt like a lot of ideas that really we didn't know where they were going even at the conclusion, but then the Ultimate Universe one-shot did kind of set up some interesting bits, but now there's a clear path ahead as to why Ultimate Invasion happened, how that leads to these books, and setting up something big on the horizon with the return of the Maker. So this one, T'Challa is king of Wakanda. He is the Black Panther, but there are some different there are some slight differences, but a lot of familiarity. There's some big differences too, but I liked it. Stefano Caselli is doing the artwork. The artwork is clean. I really like it. This is basically the forces of Moon Knight. I'm trying to find you a good 2 pages without ads, but this is basically the agents of Moon Knight versus Wakanda, and it's really good. It's got a nice pace to it. Brian Hill does a great job with all of the geopolitical stuff going on there, and just it's interesting with the whole idea of the heavy as the crown on the head and all that kind of stuff. A lot of cliche-ish type stuff, but Brian Hill does a great job of keeping it fresh and keeping it moving, and the art's really solid, and it's another solid book. I don't think it's going to blow people away as much as Ultimate Spider-Man #1, but it was solid, and it was severely under-ordered, so be on the lookout for that. Then we got Wolverine Madripoor Nights, issue #1. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I was not looking forward to reading this comic at all. This is written by Chris Claremont. It's supposed to be like a sequel to, what is it, X-Men 268 or something? The issue everybody knows, the Jim Lee issue, right, with Wolverine, Captain America, Black Widow. This is picking up after that issue, telling the continuation of that story in a way. So it's got a nostalgia factor there, plus it's written by Chris Claremont. The artwork is by Salazar. That is Edgar Salazar. And, you know, when I first flipped through this book, I was like, the art's all right. I mean, it's decent, it's competent, but nothing really stands out about it as being exceptional. And I was like, you know, and Chris Claremont writing a book in 2024, I don't know, I just was set up for this being dull, but you know what? It's a new #1 at Marvel. Let me at least give it a shot. I liked it. I'm not saying it was good, but it blew me away because it wasn't terrible. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was neat. It was nostalgic for sure, kind of hearkening back to that issue and just building from there. And I mean, like I said, by the end of it, it starts kind of falling apart a little bit. But if you're, I don't know, if you're a super huge X-Men fan, you're a big Claremont fan, definitely check it out. Definitely check it out. But Wolverine Madripoor Nights, I guess it was not as bad as I thought it would be. It was okay. Fantastic Four is here with issue #17. Ryan North's been doing these self-contained kind of stories, and he had a larger narrative that was building up, and now that's all kind of reached its conclusion. So we're just kind of back to these, like, you know, smaller one-shot stories. And this was a decent enough story, but it uses an idea that's been used many times before, including in pages of the Fantastic Four in previous years. And it didn't have an interesting resolution. It kind of felt trite by the end of it, so it was just all right. It's a different artist than it has been typically. I don't know if Carlos Gomez did the last issue, but the art in this issue I liked a little bit better. I still don't necessarily like the plastic nature of the coloring. That still throws me off just a little bit, but Fantastic Four's been having some good covers. But this issue was just kind of okay. It was a really cool concept at first, though very familiar, even for Fantastic Four. But the conclusion of it just kind of felt a little trite and Fisher Price. Does that make sense? But we do have this variant cover. Greg and Tim Hildebrandt. They did the Marvel Masterpieces Volume 3 card set from back in the day, so they've been putting them cards, and you know, they've been enlarging them, putting them on covers over the last couple months, and I mean, they're products of the era. Like, the Immortal Thor one is that 90s, like, Thor costume that's just kind of ridiculous, and, you know, the Iron Man one's kind of like that Iron Man 300 era costume, and I have a big nostalgia factor for this era of comics, and for this lack of costume on Sue Storm. I remember being a kid, reading the Paul Ryan, Tom DeFalco stuff. I was like, oh man, Invisible Woman's sexy now. She was always sexy, but now she's 90s sexy. So I like that cover. Then we got Doctor Strange here with issue number 12. I'm loving what Jed MacKay's doing in the pages of Doctor Strange, but this one fell a little bit flat for me, mostly because the artwork was just a little bit wonky. I mean, it's a better artist than me, but it just didn't feel precise, didn't feel clean, didn't feel like up to this level to doing a Marvel comic. So I didn't really like the artwork, and it kind of took me out of the story. Story was decent enough. It's focusing on Bats. Bats, the ghost dog who, not Lawrence Fishburne. God, not Lawrence Fishburne. Forrest Whitaker. That was, nothing worse could have come out of my mouth just now. Anyway, Doctor Strange, number 12. I was trying to make a ghost dog joke, and then, okay, anyway. So Doctor Strange, issue number 12. It's about Bats. He's that ghost dog, and he's not Forrest Whitaker, and he is, or Leonardo DiCaprio, not that ghost dog either. There was no ghost. What am I doing? Now I'm like I'm trying to, like, I should just move on. I should just move on. I didn't really like this issue that much. The story was okay. It kind of spins out of the Crypt of Shadow stuff, but it just didn't really quite work for me. So Doctor Strange number 12, a little bit of a letdown. Let's jump over to DC. And from DC, we have Batman 142 here with Joker Year 1, Part 1, right? So Chip Zdarsky had like this kind of big tease at the end of the last issue of Batman that he was going to finally reveal the untold history of the first year of the Joker, right? And that's what this is. The story is interesting because it's more based on like Year Zero, the Snyder and Capullo stuff, so it's really referencing that, and it feels more like a follow-up to that than, say, like a follow-up to Killing Joke or a follow-up to Year One, right? But Zero Year kind of had its own kind of retelling of elements of Killing Joke and of Year One, so it kind of makes sense, right? So it feels like a follow-up to Year Zero, or 0 Year, I should say, actually. And it focuses on Gordon, where he's at in the police department. It focuses on Joker as soon as he gets out of that chemical bath. It gets a little bit confusing at certain times, but it's kind of playing with it. But it's basically giving you the idea that maybe somebody taught the Joker how to be the Joker, right? So that's interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see the Joker kind of go through training, it seems, where we're led to. But there's also a framing sequence in this book that's set in the future where things have gone really bad. And of course, the Batman and the Joker are right in the middle of it. That stuff is cool. The main stuff is written, it's all written by Chip Zdarsky. The main artwork is done by Coley. I think it's Giuseppe Coley, but the framing bits are done by Andrea Sorrentino, and those are some of the absolute most striking bits of this book. There's the Coley stuff, but then let me find another one of those Sorrentino pages because I love Sorrentino's artwork, and it's just awesome. Now, there's only a few pages of it, including at the end, but I don't want to show you that one because it's a big spoiler as to what the series is doing with that future framing device. But I liked it. It was all right. When you're playing around with classics like Year One, classics like Killing Joke, and modern era classics like 0 Year, there's always a little bit of trepidation when I first start reading it, right? But it worked out, it ironed out by the end, and it set up an interesting premise and hook for me to want to come back and continue to read this. But I have been reading it because I do think Batman's a pretty solid book when it's got pretty solid artwork involved. Then we got Kneel Before Zod, issue number 2. This is written by Joe Casey with artwork by Dan McDade, I believe. Let me verify that. I really like the art. Kind of got this, yeah, Dan McDade. Kind of got like this simple, almost like animated series kind of look to it, but a little bit more texture, a little bit more density in the backgrounds. But this is a good focus on Zod and his wife Ursa. Zod is trying to rule this planet. He's trying to build an army of conquerors to conquer planets and all this stuff, but his wife's feeling like maybe he's getting a little soft. So there's a lot of that kind of play. Not a whole lot actually necessarily happens in the issue, but the exploration on Zod, where he's at, his motivations, and in particular Ursa, really worked for me. Joe Casey did a great run on Adventures of Superman back in the day, so I'm really excited to see him revisit the proper Zod, and I'm liking this book. I like the art, I like the writing. The only thing I don't like is this stupid beard that Zod has, but you know what? I bet General Zod thinks the same thing about me. Then we've got Poison Ivy, issue number 18. This starts the secret origin of Pamela Isley. This is a Poison Ivy Year One. Now, this is a story that we've seen many times before in Poison Ivy books and Batman books. We've even gotten all this information for the most part through this series already, so it almost feels like we don't really need to do this dive back into her origin, and it didn't really elaborate too much more on anything that we didn't know just by reading the previous 18 issues of this book. I've been liking this series, but narratively, it just feels like a little bit of a misstep to go back and fill in information that's not necessarily needed or warranted for the story, but I could be judging it too soon because this is a 3-part story, and there could be bigger revelations to come. But honestly, if you read the first 18 issues of Poison Ivy, they're not giving you any new information, really. I mean, they're just showing it to you, so I don't know. Poison Ivy, issue number 19. Is aight. Then we got Shazam, issue number 8. Liked this issue of Shazam, kind of a quick wrap-up to a heavy, ending on the last issue. Black Adam comes into town. He has a fight with Shazam, Captain Marvel. They call him the Captain now. I think that's kind of dumb, but they can't call him Captain Marvel, I guess. They can call him Captain Marvel. They just can't call the book Captain Marvel. But he can't call himself Shazam. We've all had these thought experiments. We've all had these ideas bouncing around our head. How silly it is. Just call him Captain Marvel and move on. That's what you've been doing. Who cares? Who cares? You think anybody's going to mistake this dude for the Marvel Captain Marvel now? No, not at all. Anyway, Shazam, issue number 8. The big ending at the end of issue 7. Black Adam comes in town, literally wrecks things, right? And they just kind of tritely wrap it up. Trite's apparently the word of the day. They just kind of briefly wrap it up, and not really in a necessarily super cool way. It just kind of feels kind of thrown together and a little bit rushed, but I don't know. At the same time, it was still have that kind of like charm and heart that the Shazam book has had, but it just feels like it just feels like it happened too easily. But then again, there's some setup, so maybe it didn't happen too easily. Shazam was alright. Then we got Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville, issue number 6. This is the final issue of this series that I've actually really enjoyed. Like, I thought when this book first got solicited, I was like, I'll read the first issue and I'll drop out of it. And then I liked the first issue and I was like, well, I'll read the second issue and drop out of it. No, the third, oh no, the fourth, the fifth. Okay, here we go. I liked it. I liked the book. I thought it was good. Is this something I'm going to go back and revisit? No, I'll probably never read this one again, but it was fun as a weekly, silly DC comic. I like the characters of Fire and Ice. I like that old school Justice League, International, Justice League 1986 kind of stuff. So I like these characters. I like this play with them. I like this artwork. It's clean. It's simple. It's exactly perfect for the book. The book is not trying to be anything. It's not. It's just trying to be silly. It's just trying to be silly, and that's what it is. And it deals with some interesting themes and whatnot here and there, but like for the most part, I've just had fun with this book and the characterizations. So I liked it. I thought it was cool. Then we got Superman 78, The Metal Curtain, issue number 4. This is basically, because we've already had Superman 78, the first volume. That was basically what Superman 3 should have been, a Brainiac story. This is probably what Superman 4 should have been, which is a Metallo story, right? So we've got Metallo. He's a Soviet, and for some of y'all may not remember this, but back in the 80s, we were at the end of something called the Cold War. So instead of Russia, Russia was part of the Soviet Union, the USSR. And what am I giving a history lesson? Like, all y'all are my age, right? Y'all all are aware of the Soviet Union, right? USSR, right? If you're not, you're aware of the Paul McCartney song. But anyway, so Metallo is part of the Soviet Union. He is given his kryptonite powered armored suit, goes after Superman, kicks Superman's ass. He's back kicking Superman's ass again. Lex Luthor comes in to help. So it's just nice. It's like taking you back to that Christopher Reeve's Superman world and giving us a little bit more elaborate stories that we should have gotten, like focusing on major villains, like in the previous volume, Brainiac, here Metallo, and a true return of the movie Lex Luthor portrayed by Gene Hackman. So I like it, and Gavin Guidry's artwork's pretty solid. Robert Venditti does a great job with the script. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It never does. It just breezes right through. So if you get this thing in a hardcover, it's probably just read really easy, and it's just a nice addition to the Superman movie mythos. Right? Over at Dynamite, we got Thundercats. That's right, Thundercats. Ho! Every comic book reviewer is going to do that. Every one of them. Damn. Did I do it first? Probably not. Anyway, Thundercats number 1. I had to get that Rob Liefeld cover because I don't care what anybody says. I like Rob Liefeld, and his Thundercats excite me, man. Like, that's what Rob Liefeld Rob Lion-O, man. That's what that is. But I got the chance to read this book about a month ago, and I mentioned it on Rockin Robbie Live, and I got the same thoughts. This is a really solid book. I don't think it's going to wow people as much as, say, Duke number 1 did, or Transformers number 1 at all. But it is that classic Thundercats story, just told in an interesting, fun way, right? This is straight the origin of the Thundercats. It's the beginning of the story. They crash land on Third Earth. Lion-O has aged up. He's like thrown into being a leader. But Declan Shalvey, the writer, is able to kind of play with that a little bit, with a little bit more nuance, a little bit more of a poignant kind of way, where Lion-O's a little bit, you know, a little bit hot-headed, right? And he's not quite ready. He's jumping in ahead of time, and he really messes up pretty big time in the first issue of Thundercats number 1. But I like it. Drew Moss's artwork, it's clean, it's reminiscent of the animated series, but also fits very much into modern comics. I enjoyed the book. If you are a longtime Thundercats fan, I think you'll enjoy this book. If you have never read or watched the Thundercats, you will probably like this book. I really like the redesign on Tigra. He's kind of got this like mustache thing going on right there. I really like that. Shatara's in it, but mostly a big focus in on Lion-O, some really cool Panthro stuff, and some brief teases. And let me tell you something, that moment where he finally does the thunder, Thundercats, ho! I got very excited. Very excited. Thundercats was one of my favorite things when I was a kid, so thank you, Dynamite, for doing a good Thundercats comic. Thank you, Declan Shalvey. Thank you, Drew Moss. Thank you, Rob Liefeld. Loved it. All right, over at Boom, we got a Power Rangers book, and I know I dropped out of all the Power Rangers book, but this is a separate thing. It's called Power Rangers The Return. This is written by Amy Jo Johnson. Now, Amy Jo Johnson, of course, played Kimberly Hart, the original Pink Ranger. It's also written by Matt Hodson with artwork by Nico Leone. So I wanted to check it out, and at first, right out of the gate, it's pretty BA. It's set like 20-something years after the events of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV series. The Power Rangers have disbanded after defeating Lord Zed and Rita. They've disbanded, but they've had some losses. They've had some tragedy. Kimberly's changed her name. She wants to forget about the Power Rangers. It all gets brought back up again because one of them goes missing. They have to kind of put together a rescue team, or that's the idea. Kimberly doesn't want to do that, though. I got to meet and do a panel with Amy Jo Johnson earlier last year at the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo. She was talking about this. She was really excited about it, so I wanted to read it. And even if you fell out of the main Power Ranger books like I have, this isn't connected to that. This is kind of a heartfelt tribute to some of the cast members that have been lost, like Jason David Frank, for instance, and I can never remember her name, but the lady that played Trini. So there's some nice tributes to them in this issue. There's some really nice action sequences, more towards the beginning. Then it's mostly talking about the trauma of having been a Power Ranger, and it was all right. That's fine. That's decent because it was setting up for something interesting and cool, and it was nice. I liked it. So it was a return of me reading a Power Ranger comic, and I enjoyed it. So I might read more. Plus, Amy Jo Johnson's just super sweet. She was awesome. All right, also from Boom Studios, we have Pine and Miramac, issue number 2. This is from Kyle Starks and Frank Galan. I have no idea. Anybody knows, let me know, please. Pine and Miramac, though, this is like a husband and wife private investigation team, and they have fallen into this like missing persons case that has caused them to fall even deeper into this like political conspiracy. This issue is mostly them investigating this one site and kind of unraveling some clues and kind of having some nice action. It's well paced, the characters are fully realized, and the dialogue is sharp. The artwork is great too, the line work and the movement and everything involved with it, but the coloring just feels a bit muted. There are times where it works, but like even where they're using multiple colors, each panel is kind of its own shade. It's got a cool kind of thing overall, but as you're in the story at times, it reads just a little bit monotonous and a little bit dark, but they do break it up here and there, so it's not something I'm completely hating on the book, because there is an element of stuff. Maybe I just talked myself into liking the colors a little bit more, but then you got pages like this. I don't necessarily like it when like there's just all one color on a comic book page, unless that's stylistically what they're trying to do. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. I don't know. It's a good book, though. I like the book. Maybe the colors could be brighter. Maybe that could be the thing. Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue number 12, continuing the final arc of this series that I've absolutely loved. This has been a very powerful and real, brutally, tragically real love story. This dude and this chick, they meet during the apocalypse. They meet in a post-apocalyptic world. We see them meeting in the first arc. In the second arc, we see them together, and we see that relationship fracture. Now we're seeing the venom and the bitter spite afterwards, and it's all coming back together. All the ways that we're seeing scenes from, like, their age in Arc 1, scenes from them in their age in Arc 2, things that are building in, like, there's flashbacks, and there's an interesting structure going on here that absolutely pangs the heart. Anybody who has loved and lost, like truly, you're gonna feel some shit when you're reading through Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. I just met Jason Aaron, and we were talking a lot about Punisher. We were talking about his Superman and his Batman. But Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, I had to tell him, I was like, that's a great book. So I'm loving this book. We're nearing the end. Sad, but the structure of it demands it to be so. Then we got Conan the Barbarian, issue number 7. Another super satisfying issue of Conan the Barbarian. The writer, Jim Zub, has done an absolute fantastic job of capturing that old school feel, but with, I don't know if I can show that. There's boobies on that page. That old school feel with a little bit of a modern approach. I do like the coloring here, where it's a little bit more varied inside the actual panels. It's dealing with some interesting themes, typical Conan themes, but it's doing it in an exciting way. So this is a perfect blend of classic Conan into modern comics, and it doesn't lose any of its appeal from back in the day or any of the appeal of what makes comics great today. Conan the Barbarian, I'm just super digging it. All right, then we got Dark Spaces Dungeon, issue number 3. This book there's been extended waits between it, and I think it's kind of hindering my enjoyment just slightly, just a little bit. But I do like the book. It's about this dude. He's not really necessarily a serial killer. I guess he's like a serial torturer. But for decades, he's basically had people in these dungeons that he's crafted that he can like manipulate the walls to press in on them and break their bones and then allow them to heal and break them again and just pin them. And it's about power and control or something like that. It's about this one dude, the one dude to escape one of these rooms. And now he has dedicated his life to hunting this person down. And now there's more to the story. We're building up into it. This one felt just a little bit, there was some interesting information that was delivered in this one, but didn't feel like it moved things ahead too much, or maybe it was just that it didn't have much excitement. Not that a book about somebody torturing people for decades should be exciting, or maybe it should. I don't know. But Dark Spaces Dungeon, I'm still digging it, and I'm loving Hayden Sherman's art. Again, they just absolutely rock and always shift and change their style for the appropriate atmosphere in each project they do. Gone, issue number 2. This is from Distillery. This is written and illustrated by Jock. And it's an alright book. It's okay. It's about this young woman who gets stranded on a spaceship. She goes into these ships to like steal supplies to take them back to her poor community. She winds up on one of these ships that takes off. There's some terrorists that are there. And they're on this ship, and they've been on it for a while now. It's an interesting structure they're playing with, so we're like in the second of 3 of these, I believe. So there's some time passages going on here. There's some interesting ideas, like the idea that the ship is so massive and it's kind of run by a skeleton crew, because the rest of the crew's like in some kind of like cryo state or something. So like they can never find these insurgents or whatever you want to call them, right? These people that are there, this rebellious resistance, these terrorists, these pirates, whoever, they're just on here. They worship this deity. They're almost cult-like. Some of that stuff gets lost in the plot just a little bit, but overall the art's fine. The usage of the space is fine, but it doesn't ever really fully compel me as something worth reading 100% for everybody. So that's what I thought. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought. Let's recap. Gone is just kind of okay. Dark Spaces Dungeon is interesting, but not quite so exciting. Conan the Barbarian is Conan the Barbarian. Once Upon a Time at the End of the World was excellent. Pine and Miramac, only some slight issues with the colors. Outside of that, I like it. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, The Return. Amy Jo Johnson writing Power Rangers, and it's a nice tribute to old school stuff. Thundercats, issue number 1, Rob Liefeld. I'm not going to give it cover of the week. I love this cover, but I couldn't do that. I really do like that book, though. Superman 78 Metal Curtain. I'm liking that one. Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville. Satisfying conclusion of what was a satisfying book for me. Shazam number 8 was aight. Poison Ivy 19 retreads ground already retreaded in this exact series, so it kind of threw me off a little bit. It was aight. Kneel Before Zod, though, I'm liking that book a lot. Batman, Joker Year 1, number 1. Some interesting stuff being set up there. Doctor Strange was a little bit of a letdown. It stars Forrest Whitaker as a ghost dog. Fantastic Four, I like that cover. I like this cover. I didn't really like the insides that much. Kind of trite. Wolverine Madripoor Nights didn't suck. like I thought it would. I actually kind of dug it. Then we got Ultimate Black Panther, not worth $25, but definitely worth cover price. A really cool, solid new vision of Wakanda in this Hickman Ultimate Universe. Gunslinger Spawn, do what Spawn do. Kaya's one of the best books on shelves, hardly anybody talks about. Crave, kind of getting a little anemic in its plot, but it does get the smell of the week. Smells like a library and sex. And there's library sex that happens in that book. Holy cow, that actually is a perfect... Bloodrik was a perfect conclusion. I want to see more work from Andrew Kroenke. But, pick of the week and cover of the week goes to the one hand, issue number 1 from Ron V, Lawrence Campbell, Lee Lowridge, Aditya Bidikar, and Tom Mueller. So that's what I read, that's what I thought, that's what I dug. What are you reading? What are you digging? What are you thinking? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for reading. Station, pop, pop. Boom!